Hello and welcome back to my channel Lady T. My name is Natalie and today we are going to talk about two books because I feel like they are the same story but just a continuation. The second book is a continuation of the first book, so I thought, well, just do them all in one video. So we're going to talk about Wintersong and Shadowsong by Jae-Jones, and I'm so excited, so let's just get started. Now, the first thing that I want to say is that if you hear any background noises, then that is more than likely because the window is open, because there's a heat wave, so that's why I'm sweating and it's just freaking warm, so there's that. But I want to get into the books. I found these books, I think, at the beginning of this year or somewhere last year, but I absolutely fell in love with the first book. I saw Wintersong so many times just laying in the bookstore, and I was just like, I have to pick it up because it looks, something about the cover just draws me in, and I'm a sucker for covers, or good covers, and I was not disappointed. Now, the story is about Liesel, or Elizabeth, who works at an inn with a family, and when she was young she apparently met someone who we later come on to know was the Uilkoning, or the Goblin King, a mythical creature that lives underground and is basically some sort of the king of the fairies, but it's the king of the goblins or something. There's a whole German mythology behind it. But yeah, her sister, and I'm not sure how to pronounce this name, but Cave or something, I will just put it here in the video, gets abducted to there, and Liesel tries to get her back, and then she has to swap places and she falls in love with the Uilkoning, and at the end of the book, Wintersong, she has to leave. She doesn't have to leave, but he lets her go and she gets to go back up. So, before we move on to Shadowsong and what that whole story is about, I first want to give my thoughts on Wintersong. As I said, I absolutely love this book, and the reason why is because the way Mrs. Jones writes is so smoothly, and everything she writes, just like Cornelia Funke, my favorite author, everything that she writes just feels like magic, like it is its own symphony. Everything just goes so well together and is just so well articulated that the story just draws you in, and it doesn't feel like you're reading a story anymore, but that you're part of it and that you're watching everything, and it's just so amazing. I absolutely love her writing, so much that when I finished this I was crying my eyes out, and I immediately ordered Shadowsong after I couldn't find it in the bookshop, because after finishing this I first went to the bookshop and they didn't have Shadowsong, so I had to order it online, and I had to wait for the sequel, and that is something that I cannot do, and I'm excited, but I had to, and it was amazing as well. But yeah, that is one of the things that's really great about these books. It's not just that it is a good story, but also so beautifully written and just amazing. Also, I will say that when I started reading this, I was like, this is a bit like fanfiction, and not the bad kind of fanfiction where everything goes and there's no logic to anything that's happening, but mainly because there was a Goblin King and a girl who fell in love with him, and they're trying to work everything out together. So I'm not sure why I got a fanfiction feel, because it is much better written. And I'm not saying that no fanfiction is written well, but we all know that almost anything goes with fanfiction, and that is often badly written, but it often doesn't matter. But this is some good stuff. This is really nice. One of the other things that I really like is, apparently this Goblin King is something from German mythology, where he rules the underworld and keeps everything in check there. And if I remember correctly, because it has been a while since I read it, it also has something to do with him bringing winter back or bringing summer back, or that the seasonal things just happen as they should. But I'm not sure, that maybe I'm now remembering away past winter that I want to talk about next week, so that may be a thing. But there's something about that, and he has to keep the check between the realms of the underworld and the world above, so that the goblins or the fairies stay down and everyone else stays up or something. I'm really not sure what I'm talking about anymore. It's way too warm. I did my research before doing this video, but my brain is just melting away, I think. It's way too warm. I'm not made for this weather. So that's where I'm at. But I really like the development in their relationship, because the Elfkonig, to me, I saw him as Thorin Oakenshield from The Hobbit. A little bit stern, a little bit standoffish, but when you get to know him, he's this really deep guy and just rocked, and oh, I was melting. In a good way, not in the way it's way too hot me. And I just really like how they kind of start off as just like the Beauty and the Beast, where it's obvious that the woman doesn't necessarily really want to be there, or that she has given up to be for someone else to be there. Where am I going with this? No. My brain is really not working, forgive me. What I really like is that they slowly work on their relationship to have it become more healthy and to really talk about things and the depths of stuff, and there is sex happening everywhere, and at some point you're like, this is not the most healthy relationship in the world, but then in the second book it gets better, and my whole mind is just like, I really have no idea what I want to say and what point I'm trying to make. So that's what I liked. So the reason why I think the Goblin King was very realistic as a character was because he is partly beast, but he once used to be a boy who came from the world that we live in, not from the underworld, but just the regular world here up above the surface. And that you could sometimes see a glimmer of that boy, and that is who Liesel or Elizabeth falls in love with, because of the man that she also sees behind the beastly appearance that she sees up front. So that is just a bit like Beauty and the Beast, where Belle learns to love the man in the beast, just as I was just explaining. Okay, so that was very realistic, that they weren't immediately like, there was a connection between them, but it wasn't immediately like, this is the love of my life and I will drop everything and all common sense and stuff like that. So you could see her melting down a bit and not being herself anymore, and I'm talking about Elizabeth, and that is also at the end, I think, if I remember correctly, why he lets her go back up, and he basically sacrifices his world because he's supposed to have a queen or something, if I remember correctly. I really should have done more research, but yeah, that is where the first book ends, and I was crying my heart out, as I said. But then we got Shadowsong. Very happy about that, because I wasn't done with this story. And in this story, she goes back up, Liesel is back up, and it takes place 6 months after Wintersong, and Liesel or Elizabeth and her brother have a very good ability to play music very well, and especially Elizabeth, she is able to write music. She writes music and it's very beautiful, and everyone learns to love it, and so they get to travel the world a bit, and they have to go to someone who sends for them or is very important in that genre, and they are going there to perform or to at least be there, and then all shit goes down and she has to run from something, and the world, the line between the two worlds of the underworld and the upper world, there's something happening there, and it starts to diminish, and that's actually because the Goblin King let her go, and the Goblin King eventually needs to be, I really don't remember. So basically, there are old laws in place why he couldn't have let her go, but he did. So now their old shit is going down. So they need to find a way to break the laws, old laws, or to come up with new ones. And in the end, spoiler, now you have the ability to click away or to mute me. Eventually, they go down, and there is a very sweet moment, and I was crying my eyes out again. And her brother Joseph decides to stay there as the Goblin King, a willing Goblin King this time, because usually they get tricked into being the Goblin King when the old Goblin King is dead. Not dead, I'm sorry, but done with the job, which I can understand. But Joseph actually decides to give up his life up above and be the new Goblin King. That was something very clever, because Jones the author knew that she couldn't just be like, oh, the old laws are gone and we're just now going to get new laws and everything is happy, even though everything is upside down and it's not supposed to be. So she needed someone to put in the place of the Goblin King so that Elizabeth and the Goblin King could be together, as eventually the Goblin King gets called Wolfgang and they live up above. Happy end, everything, but you can see it coming from a little bit, and I don't mind it, but you can see it coming because someone has to take his place, and who is the only guy that is in the story that would be perfect for the place, and that is of course Joseph. But I still liked it as an ending because it was very fitting also as his character was developing, and we needed someone out there to be the Goblin King, so maybe in a couple decades we can have another story with him finding the love of his life or something, but we don't know. But yeah, that was the ending of Shadowsong, and the rest, I felt like at times Shadowsong was a bit longer than I needed it to be, but I still loved it because I loved Wintersong so much and I just needed the ending as a true fan. I really did. I needed that ending, and it didn't. This was just like, I love the Hobbit movies, and I know that they are stretched out way too much, but I loved every second of it because I loved the world and the dynamic there. And that was a bit the same for me with Shadowsong, that it was maybe a bit bigger than it needed to be. It had a little more story than it needed, but I loved it because I wanted every second and every sip of that world that I could get. Also, I really like the role of music in this book, because it isn't just about, oh, two people met and they fell in love and they were children and blah 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 blah, the same old story that we've heard before, but they actually bond over music, and the Goblin King actually is drawn to the surface to hear the music that Elizabeth plays. So I really like that touch, and I really like that in the second book her music gets a bigger role, and that she actually gets the acknowledgement that she deserves. Yeah, and those are my thoughts about these two books, and it ended perfectly, and I didn't need a third story. I don't think it needed that because it would have just been drawn out, but I absolutely loved it, and after that I felt so sad for a couple of days because I was like, I need a Goblin King in my life. I need a man who loves me like that in my life. But I will get there someday. I will be fine. But yeah, that is one of those things that love stories can do to you, that they draw you in so well that you're like, but now the best thing that I felt, or the feeling that I got after finishing these two books, especially after Shadowsong, was like, what is the meaning of my life? Is this my life? Because I had just spent reading this book and I was sucked in so into that world that it was a little bit hard to be like, oh yeah, that is not the world that I live in. I'm here and I want to live in that world, so but eventually I got over it. I had a book hangover. That is what I'm trying to say. That is what my way overheated brain is trying to come up with. I had a book hangover. And after Wintersong, the book hangover wasn't that bad. Mainly because I knew that I still had Shadowsong and that it was on its way and it was here the day after or something, so I had time. But, oh, book hangovers are pretty severe sometimes, and this one, because it was written so beautifully and pulled you in so much into the world, it was a tough hangover. So those are my thoughts on the book, on the two books. I really am interesting to know if you read the books and what you think about them. I highly recommend that you read them. They are amazing. However, just be aware that they might suck you in completely and that your book hangover will be pretty severe. Not making it too big for you, because sometimes a book gets hyped up so much that you like go in with very high expectations and then they are not met. So yeah, this book sucks. Just get it to read how much it sucks. It's really good. Next week I want to talk about The Way Past Winter. I forget the author, but I think her name starts with Kathleen. But I'm going to talk about that book next week, and I hope that you enjoyed this video and that you have an amazing day. Have a good day. I just said that. Warm brain. Goodbye.